diagnosed with a soft tissue cancer called synovial sarcoma. And at the time it was like the rarest case reported because it's usually found in like younger adults in different areas. Mine was like caged right in my kneecap. And this is like kind of sick, but I always like tell people whenever I'm asked that question, I'm like, you know, if you're gonna get cancer and lose your leg, the best time in your life to have it done is around 9 and 10. Like, you understand the gravity of the situation. You can have more in like complex conversations about dying, getting sick, like all these different scenarios. But I think when you're at that age, like, you can understand it only really on the surface. It was scary. I got really sick. It all happened really fast. I was put on an adult protocol, chemotherapy. It was an experimental protocol at the time. It was not successful. We had to stop early because I started having kidney failure, my colon collapsed. I started showing signs of like permanent organ damage. So they were like, I had less than 1% tumor kill, and they're like, all right, we got to make a decision here. And my parents ultimately let me make the decision, which like is an amazing story. But then, like, I don't know, me, 30-year-old and funny me is like, could they really not make that decision? But they asked me what I wanted, and I just remember being so tired of being sick, and like kind of mirroring a lot of like what you see right now with COVID is like, I remember missing going to school, and I remember like missing being tired and like bored in class, and missing playing with my brother. And so basically the way that it was presented was that amputation was our way out of cancer world. So I wanted the amputation, and 3 days later, on May 19th, 1999, I got my amputation. And I was lucky that I've never had any type of relapse. So I've been healthy ever since, which is amazing. My parents are like essential baby boomers. So like they did not care that I had an amputation. Like they were like, nah, you're still gonna do sports. And so I grew up, and I fell in love with the world of competitive cheerleading. When I was in the 7th grade, the movie Bring It On came out, and like my life changed. My life changed. My brother's a personal trainer, so I was going to like his garage gym. Like we were still trying to like push the envelope for training, which like I started feeling a little conflicted by, but once everything was shut down, it's like, all right. I called my coach. He lives in, so I used to live in Austin. He lives in Austin still. And he's like, listen, he's like, everybody shut down. Like, you're not going to fall behind or anything. So basically it's like, just do as much as you can to stay like fit. I just try to do at least something every day that like is going to get my heart rate up, and at least do some type of mobility afterwards, stretching. So I started, it was the first year I volunteered at the Amputee Coalition Youth Camp at AMP Camp. And it was like really my first time like being in a disabled community type environment with camp. And then at the same time, my dad and I like got into some bet over like a family party of like who was a better athlete. And of course I'm like flexing. I'm like, I'm an above the knee amputee and a Division I athlete. Like clearly like blah, blah, blah. And he's like, Lacey, he was like, you couldn't pole vault 2 feet. And of course, like, that's all I needed at that time. Like, I think 20-year-old Lacey versus 30-year-old Lacey, like the fuel to the fire is a little different. But at that time, like, that's all I needed. And again, like, only my family would just readily have like a pole vault pit and poles like ready the next day to be like, all right, it's on. So I could run on my walking legs from cheer, because we do like running tumbling passes. So I wasn't running very far, but you know, it was like a little jog into the pit. And I just fell in love with it. And I was really lucky that I have an amazing support system in Denver with my prosthetist as well. His name's Chris Hoyt. And he was like, well, if you want to pole vault, like we better get you a running leg. So he donated my first running leg, and I was pole vaulting for a long time. And the more I would like look up amputee pole vault, like there's nothing. So it's not an event for para, but I kept getting rerouted to Paralympics. Basically, I eventually got invited to do like a Paralympic exhibition race at the Colorado High School like state champs, just basically as like a para. It was a unified race just to see if I could like run a time for the 100. So my first 100, I had qualified for London, and it was just like a really cool feeling. I was like, dang, like this could really be like my thing right now. And met a couple of Autobach representatives that were doing Genium trials. So then I kind of got contracted with them we were doing Genium trials for a long time, traveling the country. And then I started working a little bit more on the R&D side for the running and the sports stuff. And things all just kind of fell into place as far as like the disabled amputee community in sport. And I graduated in 2011. So I think my first race was May. It was actually my ampiversary, May 19th, 2011. Yeah, I started long jumping in 2013. My fourth meet, I broke the American record. It was a 17-year-long record, which is super cool. And it turns out my gymnastics background translated well with the jumps. The first time I made that team and we got the shipment of uniforms and gear to my house, that was really cool to like get all that USA uniform. My dad went to trials, but like got swiftly beaten down, did not make any team. So it was like kind of cool, I think, for him and I to share that moment where, you know, like the dream was happening, put in the time, the work, the effort, the discipline that it really takes to be elite. And I think that was the time where I didn't feel like I was faking it anymore. Like I was like, oh, I'm actually good at this. Like I've made my place here. I remember my first team, it was in Lyon, France, and I remember seeing, because with a para team, you have all disabilities, all flavors. No one's getting the same cut, you know, like you never get the same disability no matter where you go. And I think like that's another reason to find like the importance of unity, just like within any community that you want to be a part of. And the nice thing about the para community is like there's people that are also like sickly overly competitive like me there as well. So that was an important part to be a part of as well. As soon as I got fit with a prosthetic, like mentally I was ready to be like, all right, I'm me again. One time I got picked last at like recess basketball, and when I was easily before a top 3 pick every time. And so that was like, I think socially and emotionally, that was a lot harder to understand as a kid, because I was like, I'm still the same person, but these people see me differently. And I think that hindered me in a way that I avoided the disability community for a really long time, because I didn't want to be disabled. I didn't want to have let cancer win or beat me. And I didn't want my leg to have held me back. So I call it like I was in disability denial for a long time. And I think for my athletic life and like growing up now, like my social life, like that helped, I think, as far as like integrating back with my friends and my like social group, because so often kids, adults, like very often in your community, you're the only person with an amputation or a limb difference. And it can be really alienating. So I was like, oh, I'm just gonna ignore it. Just pretend like I'm normal. And so it took me a long time to kind of come back around and make that full circle. Like that was where AMP Camp came in. And I was like, I want to give back to the children, because I've had this great life and like college cheer, blah, blah, blah. And then by the time I went to AMP Camp and got back, I was like, I feel like I got more of a camp experience than these kids did, because it's something that even as an adult, you don't realize how important that the limb loss community is to you.